Welcome to Esoterica, the podcast, where we discuss the obscure, offbeat, and unusual. I'm Chris Schultz.
And I'm Aaron Christian. Today's episode is brought to you by Sex Panther Cologne. When you need to musk up, ready to do the no pants dance, don't go for London Gentleman or even Blackbeard's Delight. The only cologne guaranteed to work 60% of the time, every time, is Sex Panther by Audion. You might have difficulty obtaining it, as it's illegal in 9 countries, due to it being made with bits of real panther. But if you can get a hold of it, you'll make your little kitty purr. Sex Panther by Audion.
Smell that Sex Panther.
So, Chris.
Yes, Aaron.
What are we listening to today?
So this album is very special to me. Not only is it offbeat and criminally esoteric, it's an album that's sort of a touchstone for me. Very personal, and not necessarily because of the content, but just my relationship with this album. So this will be kind of fun. Today's album is The Mysterious Tale of How I Shouted Wrong-Eyed Jesus by Jim White. It's his 1997 debut album. And it's one of those albums that's just wandered in my life when I was in a weird place and disappeared and then came back in again. And just since then has been probably, if I had to pick a top 5 albums, would be like number 3.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, today we will be peeling back the layers of the onion known as Chris.
Yes.
All
Season
right.
1, we dove into Aaron. Now we're going to take a little dive into Chris, and that's what we'll be doing today. So Jim White is, I don't know, it'd be hard to classify him. He's in that Americana category. You could call it country, you could call it folk. He's really kind of his own distinct thing.
Okay.
But Americana, folky is probably the easiest descriptor for him. So this album, The Mysterious Tale of How I Shouted Wrong-Eyed Jesus. There's a long story behind the title. I really suggest, if anybody's interested, that they pick up the album and read the liner notes themselves. I'm not going to delve into that whole story. I approached Jim about talking about this album, as the nice thing about an artist who's sort of off the map like Jim is he's a little more approachable. And I have had conversations with him several times over the past few years, including in 2014 when my 2 children reviewed this album on a blog that I was keeping, and he was really touched by that. So now the adult is coming back to, and I don't like to say we review albums. I don't think that's fair. I think discussion is more of what we do than a review.
Yeah.
Because we're not critical of them necessarily.
I don't think we've ever had an album where we explicitly hate the album, right? We just come on this show and we just kind of talk about it.
Yeah. I think if there was an album that we really hated, we probably wouldn't bother.
Exactly.
But,
yeah.
That being said, so I did talk to Jim about doing this, and what we consider a deep dive and what Jim considers a deep dive is 2 different things. Jim is very verbose. And he just was working on a new album and didn't have the time to really go into detail about Wrong-Eyed Jesus. So I thought what I would do today, other than getting your thoughts on after hearing these for the first time, is kind of go into my emotional connection with the material. So it's probably 50% about the album, 50% about moi.
I love it. I want to peel back the layers.
Cool. So let's dive right in. The first track on the album is, if I can find the window here, Book of Angels.
Big old car, moving fast. Watch the world go speeding by. Little wheels inside my brain. God, I wonder where I'm going. Where you going? Need a ride. We got time.
Just kind of slide right into that like mellow headspace. So, some openers sort of rock out or, set the mood for the album. And this is, you just slide into a quiet place in your head.
Yeah, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I definitely felt like it fell into this like early 2000s genre of like soft rock, which is kind of interesting. couldn't put my finger on, when I say I couldn't put my finger on it, I mean like who I mean when I say that.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to going back to Dead Poet Society. Not that this sounds anything like that, but where it's a very distinct
Yes.
sound.
Yeah.
Like you hear things that remind you of, but like if somebody put a gun to my head and said, name the bands that Jim White sounds like, I'd be eating a bullet because I really couldn't tell you.
Yeah. I'll have to think a little more as it goes on, but yeah, no, it had a nice vibe in that sense to just like chill.
And that's kind of the feeling I get from this album. It's like a space in between things going on. Like, when you get a lot of going on in your life, especially when it's bad or not even bad, but just you're not in a good place.
Right.
There's those periods of time in between things happening where you're just in your head. And this is sort of like a soundtrack to that.
And I got a little nervous when you said that this was Americana because Iris Dement gave me a headache. And I enjoyed the album that we listened to, but yeah, I can only take so much. This is not like that.
Yes, yeah. This when I think of the Americana genre, there's more. I think I've heard the term alt country thrown around sometimes just because, well, it's like when alternative became a genre. It's an alternative to the mainstream, but what that encompasses is a huge variety of sounds.
Yeah, I just don't want to become an Americana-rama or anything like that.
Right.
So.
There's a show on
ATD.
On
yeah.
ATD, yeah. Okay, so the next track on the album is "Burn the River Dry."
Door is locked, no one's home. Frame is empty, pictures missing. You throw that rock right through the window. Hey, I know him, he's a singer. You roam around another town. It looks like Phoenix, Arizona. You borrow the car from its owner. That sleepyhead keeps dreaming the dreams of suburbia.
I think one of my favorite lines from this song is
Burn the River Dry.
all them shallow graves that you got buried in the field of your experience.
Ooh.
I've often thought of grief as zombies, in the sense
Okay, all
that
right.
you have that son of a bitch buried,
Yeah.
but it keeps coming back up again.
Man, right in the feels.
Right?
This definitely is more of that Americana sound than this entire album so far. So the two songs we listened to is nothing that I was expecting it to be, because I didn't go into this having any. I went into this having no knowledge of Jim White, and this is completely the opposite of what I thought it was going to be. So
Nice.
I'm pleasantly surprised.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I expected it to be just some guy singing with an acoustic guitar and like. So,
yeah, and it's so much more.
Yeah, says me, guy who puts out an all solo album yesterday. So, but
So the first time this album wandered into my life, I had this landlord named Roy. He's a cool cat, troubled individual, had a lot going on in his life, but he really turned me on to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and I really encouraged my my love affair with Tom Waits. So he had good taste in music and got me into good stuff. And he was no longer my landlord. I don't think I had seen him for a while. I'm trying to remember the exact timeline, but this was in the midst of my first marriage. And Roy and I had gotten together, and without any preamble, he just handed me the CD. He's like, "You gotta listen to this." And I threw it in the back of my car and thought nothing of it. And my first distinct memory of actually listening to this album was sitting in my truck in the parking lot of a Bickford's, waiting for my ex-wife's supposedly abusive ex-boyfriend to show up to talk to me about her. And that was like the most messed up situation. And this album was the soundtrack to that. And that's what started it all. So,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, right? So the next song is kind of... I'm going to go on a limb here and say that this is almost...
Go on a branch.
Go on a branch. Almost like a personal anthem. It's called Still Water, and you know that expression, still waters run deep. You know, I've always kind of thought that about myself. Like, I tend to be a little quiet and reserved, but there's a lot.
Yes, there is.
Below the surface. Let's take a dive into Still Waters.
Well, I was checked up down in Mobile with a girl from New York City. She woke me up one night to tell me that we weren't alone. She said she saw the ghost of a woman staring at me.
So in interviews, Jim White has said numerous times he's always kind of perplexed at why people have such a connection to this album. He has admitted that he was in a pretty bad headspace. This album sort of chronicled his own mental breakdown. And I think part of the appeal, I mean, for me, the melancholy is beautiful, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, there's something very touching and immediate about it. But as I mentioned before, and I'm probably going to say again before we're done here, it feels to me like a soundtrack to my headspace.
I get that.
I'm one of those guys. I call myself a professional navel gazer. I spend a lot of time.
I'm one of those guys, you know, just those professional navel gazers
that
out
kind
there.
of guy. I spend more time reflecting inward than anything else, and this feels like that. If you know, there was music playing inside my head. So there you go. The next song here kind of goes.
Before we move on,
Yeah,
I wanted to provide my thoughts.
Aaron has thoughts. Sorry.
All I was going to say was this song had a darker vibe to it than the others, like this eerie sort of thing going on. I think it was guitar. I don't know. They had those higher notes going on, and I think I mentioned this specific thing before, and I don't remember what it was, but in Bohemian Rhapsody, there's that one part, shivers down your spine, and he scrapes the back end of the guitar, and it sounds like shivers. It kind of it had that like eerie sort of like, you know, thing going on with that aspect of it. So I thought that was an interesting use of instrumentation to emphasize a point.
I do remember in an interview one time, Jim was saying that, especially with this album, when he was in the studio, people kept telling him he couldn't do what he was doing. He's just got a very unusual approach to playing his instruments, and I think that comes through. And there's definitely some dark imagery in here. And I don't know, I like that kind of thing. So
Yes.
I think it speaks to me. So the next track kind of goes off in a different direction. When Jesus Gets a Brand New Name.
Damn, them dogs are really smart. I think I'd better lose the snowshoes, stomp the skid marks on the road to throw them off. But damn, them dogs are smart and on the devil's island of the heart. You can't afford to make a big mistake. You gotta plan your jailbreak carefully, very carefully. And these crickets chirping in my ear are about to drive me smack insane. I don't know why.
So this song seems sort of like a stream of consciousness as far as the lyrics go. Like, first verse, a guy on the lam hiding from the cops, and then it just kind of goes into like beat poetry after that.
I lost all my thoughts after we just had all the computer malfunctions here. But I just remember it being a mess of music, and I enjoyed it. I don't know what's up with Apple today.
Apple.
But yeah, what was they saying? There's a lot to unpack there.
There is a lot to unpack there, yeah. A lot of stuff bubbling below the surface on that one.
So I'm just going to let you finish any thoughts you have on that, because I've lost all mine.
Cool. Well, let's take a peek at the next track, Sleepytown.
It's Sleepytown. You let the wild wind blow away your name. It's Sleepytown. You let the healing rain just wash your pain away. Hey.
So in a weird way, I'm feeling Rob Thomas a little bit.
Like Matchbox 20?
Yes.
Rob Thomas?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know that makes like absolutely no sense. But I feel like boiled down, like there's a little bit of that in there. Again, I've been saying this whole time, like I can't put my finger on it, and that's me like putting my finger on it but missing it.
Yeah,
You know?
it's as close as you can get.
Yeah, it's like pinning the tail on the donkey and putting it on its forehead.
It's on the animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of one thing I like about this song is how it builds. It starts off pretty sparse and it grows as you go through it. The other thing I was thinking, and maybe you can answer this question as a musician, do you think you write your best music when you're sad or upset as opposed to being happy and content?
Yes, 100%.
Because it's the melancholy in this song. Like this, there's some happy themes going on, but it's definitely a sad song.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Well, think about when you're upset versus when you're happy. You never, I mean, most times, right? When you need to express how you're feeling, it's usually when you're sad.
Yeah.
When you're happy, I mean, you just kind of react how you react. But when you're sad, like sometimes you need an outlet that's not aggressive and not upsetting.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes there are people in this world that need to communicate their problems that don't know how to talk normally. Versus when you're happy, you're just kind of content. And I feel like most people know how to deal with happiness, but don't know how to deal with sadness. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's my thought.
It did occur to me while I was listening to this song that I would really like to hear George Harrison's song, Here Comes the Sun, sung from somebody who is at rock bottom.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Because that's a pretty happy
Here Comes
song.
the Sun in a minor key, and then like with that,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
I think-
yeah.
Because if you think about it, like how much more, that's a positive, uplifting
Like
song.
imagine 1994 Kurt Cobain singing that in a minor key.
Right?
Like that'd be messed up.
It
but-
would, yeah. Because think about that, like Here Comes the Sun, that's a happy song. But imagine if you are in the darkest of dark places, but you're looking up knowing that the sun could come. Like, it'd be a totally different song.
I feel like how creepy would that be? Like you've heard, happy songs in a minor key and stuff like that, but how creepy is it to actually have somebody in that place just like, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like a lot of times when you hear those songs done in a minor key, it's like somebody's just playing it, but to actually perform it that way.
Yeah, with that
the-
emotion to it.
Yeah. Ooh. Food for
New
thought.
podcast.
Right?
Songs in a minor key.
Songs in a minor key. So the next song on here, this is one of my favorite tracks on this album. Perfect Day to Chase Tornadoes.
Way down south, I know a girl who is blind. She walks along a lonely highway each day. She dreams that one day a man will pull up in a car.
Okay, before we go any further, I want to take a minute to talk about the awesome folks at Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way. In fact, it's the way that we make a podcast. Let me explain.
It's free.
There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer.
Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more.
And you can make money from your podcast. Best part, no minimum listenership.
Ooh. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
It's so cool. We found the service, we started using it, we're making podcasts.
Yeah, making podcasts, making money, having a good time.
So listen, you want to get you out there, you want to be heard, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Thank you.
This kind of makes me think of those times in your life where you're in a bit of a rut. Things aren't that interesting and you kind of wish something crazy would happen to spice things up a bit. You know what I mean? A perfect day to chase tornadoes. Like, chasing tornadoes is probably not the smartest thing to do.
No.
But I bet you it's exciting as hell.
Hurricane come in.
Let the sky across Florida.
Well, yeah, think about all the shows that are on TV, and they have that, like, armored car they built out of, like, a Ford Fusion or something.
Yeah.
And, yeah, all right,
And if you think about it, I mean, I'm going to make a gross generalization about the Midwest, but there's
Disgusting.
probably not a lot to do.
No,
So chasing tornado is like good fun.
it's a good fun.
Not really advisable. But sometimes that's where you're wishing for something to come along, and sometimes when your life is in jeopardy, life's a little more exciting. I
Yeah.
guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's the adrenaline rush. It's like being on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Although I hate those ones where you feel like you're going to die, but like you typically don't die on roller coasters.
Mm.
Except for that, did you read about that roller coaster that was designed to kill people?
Oh, yes. Oh, there's a cat in the backyard. I haven't seen a cat before.
All right.
That's an aside. Yes, it's a series of loops, right?
Yeah, until your brain doesn't have enough oxygen, and then you die.
Yeah,
It's for
seems
terminally ill patients.
like a completely bad idea.
Are you making this up? I don't see this
No,
cat.
there's a cat, right? If you look out the window on right towards the back fence, there's a cat sitting on the tree that's on the ground.
Oh my God, there's a cat out there.
There's a cat.
You
All
should
right.
bring him inside and introduce him to Brett.
We're gonna have to check this out. And I'm a fan of strange and outdated idioms. So
Would you just call me?
right, it entertains me to say, if I'm just talking to somebody and you'd be like, hey, it's a perfect day to chase tornadoes. Because they'd be like, what? What now? Our next song is Word Mule, and some listeners, if they were fans of Breaking Bad, might remember this used in the last season in a pivotal scene.
Your world is in flames, there ain't even a name for the feelings you feel as you watch it all burn. There's a girl in the distance, she's calling your name, but the name that she's calling is not your name. She calls Word Mule, Word Mule, Word Mule, but is plowing the field at Word Mule, Word Mule, Word Mule, but is plowing the field.
So, was it Primus?
Oh, interesting.
That was like listening. So we just jumped from Rob Thomas to Primus. But yeah, right? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things that I was going to say about this song is it's so completely different from everything that's come before it on this album, yet it feels like it goes with it. It's sort of jarring and it's got a different tempo, but I don't feel like it's out of place.
I was just waiting for going down to South Park on I have myself a time. It's
similar vein.
it just worked that way in the most bizarre feeling. But yeah, you're right. It kind of does make sense, but also doesn't.
Yeah. It's got the same DNA. And I'm going to do something I haven't done in a little while, which is call out somebody on Genius. So, Greek Gun. This is the only song.
You called out somebody 2 weeks ago when we listened to Axiom.
Okay, well, all right. So,
It's just a question mark here. I can clearly make out what they're saying.
yeah, all right. Well, I'll call this guy out by name. Greek Gun. It's the only song on this album so far that has any annotations, or it's actually in the bio. And they write, it was featured on AMC's Breaking Bad Season 5, which is correct. It's from the scene where Hank solves the case in the bathroom. So no, they could not be more completely wrong. The scene in the bathroom, when it occurs to Hank, when Hank figures out that it's Walt, is Season 4, the end of Season 4. This song was a scene in Hank's garage as he's piecing together the evidence against Walt, coming up with this case. And it's almost like a montage. So it just bothers me that they can be so close to the mark yet so completely off.
It says one upvote too.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a down vote. Oh, I have to sign in to do that.
Well, look out for that downvote then.
Yeah. This was a really cool moment, though, and one of the reasons why I react to that is because, so Jim White has been one of my absolute favorite musicians since I discovered him. I love all of his albums. As I said, I've talked to him on occasion, so there's something really cool about actually having a relationship with somebody whose music inspires you so much. But so many people do not know of Jim White that it feels personal, like this is my music.
Right.
I get sort of possessive of it. So to be watching Breaking Bad, which is one of my favorite shows on TV, and all of a sudden there's a Jim White song playing, was like an incredible moment. Really enjoyed it. They used another Jim White song in El Camino, which was the movie that is sort of the epilogue to the whole Breaking Bad series. I don't remember off the top of my head what song that is, but we're going to take a dive into the next song, which is called Stabbed in the Heart.
Upon awakening, I find myself lying in some woods. And for the longest time I've sat here just trying to remember why I feel like I'm floating My blood is running down my shirt. Now my memory returns as the pain comes flooding. My baby, she stabbed me in my heart. She left me here.
I can definitely see why you like this album, and it is a perfect like marriage of the Residents and like something actually good.
Sorry, Homer, if you listen.
Yeah, and that's not a testament to him. That's more of a dig at you.
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
only way to get to you was through the Residents.
Through the Residents. Yeah. Yeah, this song, so as I mentioned earlier, the first time that this album wandered into my life was during the
Before times.
before times, the strange, the mysterious tale of my first marriage.
Of how I shouted my first.
Yeah. So this song, my baby stabbed me in the heart. You know, I think we all understand the metaphor of being stabbed in the heart. And I can't remember, again, the timeline of when this first came in, where I was in that marriage. But I don't like to spend a lot of time thinking about my first marriage.
Fair.
But like many things in my life, I revisit. It's a zombie of the heart.
Yep.
And the thing about that is, despite the fact that I was lied to and the whole thing was a sham and all that I suffered through that, I cared immensely about this person for a brief period of time. And finding out that everything that you thought was true and what was led to believe is a lie is totally being stabbed. in the
Oh
heart.
yeah.
And one thing that really sticks with me with this song is, the narrative in the lyrics is an actual stabbing, and he's lying there dying as she's running away. But there's a line in here, because I know about her family and their crimes upon her body, so I guess it wasn't me at all that she was trying to kill. And that is like the story of my ex-wife. All the shit
Yeah.
that happened to her when she was young was what created the entity that
Yeah.
I got
yeah.
enmeshed with. And knowing that doesn't change what you go through and the suffering of it. And I've always wanted, you think in life sometimes when you gain knowledge or perspective on something, it helps, but sometimes clarity doesn't, it just makes it more painful because
Yeah.
you understand why it's happening, but you still got to go through it. So this song speaks very loudly.
I don't want to say anything. That was a pretty good synopsis. Like I think I'm going to ruin it, so I'm not going to say words.
We'll just let that hang there, and we'll listen to Angel Land.
I cannot be Superman no more. I cannot walk upon the high wire in my mind. And now I understand the extent of my mortal cold. Suddenly and somehow I lost all my desire.
This reminded me of Neutral Milk Hotel.
Interesting. I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what song? What I don't remember. One of them.
Well,
Yeah, I'll look it up while you say some of your thoughts. But I like the Neutral Milk Hotel album because it's like in a way personal for who's the lead singer?
Jeff Magnum.
Yes. Yeah, it's very personal for him. So it's almost like he's going through something, and so we're almost reliving that type of a feeling and journey, I think, in this song. So
Yeah.
let me think of the song it was. Well, you say your thoughts.
It's just an interesting thing about artists is I know, like for Jim, this was a very personal thing that he was going through,
Yeah.
sort of exercising his demons, but that there's a universality to it that other people can identify with it. Like this song, it's funny. So I've heard this song 100 times listening to the album, but never really sat here and looked at the lyrics. And it could be taken as defeatist, where you're saying, I no longer want to shine like the sun. I just want to live my everyday life. But I think that's great wisdom. And I know we've discussed this before. especially with some of the bands that you bring to the table, where like the emo bands, where it's somebody in their 20s talking about getting older, and me as a person nearing 50 kind of chuckle. But I know I've said it before. I think as you get into your mid 30s, your 40s, you lose some of that passion in life, like that. There's not as much expectation that you're going to go out and be the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Now you're just living your life, and that's kind of what I see here, is touching that and realizing how much strife you cause yourself by wanting to burn so bright when maybe it's just time to just live your life.
Yeah.
And be a person, and that's okay.
Right. King of Carrot Flowers.
King of Carrot Flowers.
But like the acoustic part of it, like, I don't know. And some of that, like, yeah. Anyway, that's not relevant.
Cool. So we're nearing the close of the album. The next track is Heaven of My Heart.
Radio song playing in the car. Don't even know where we are. I don't know the time of day or the color of the clothes I'm wearing. Would you look at that sky? Pretty little stars twinkling.
A genuine love song.
Yeah, and that was a fun song to listen to.
Yeah, I kind of like. Now, there's one more track on the album, but it seems like a good outing for the album. Like you've been through some emotional turmoil, and now there's something uplifting.
This is like a good like closing credits to like a movie.
Yeah,
You know?
It's funny that you say that, because I cannot tell you how much music I hear or envision either opening or closing credits.
Yeah. Remember we listened to music for supermarkets, and we had that like woman going in a coming of age film. She's like going to the supermarket. She's like, ding, 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 ding. This could be the end of it.
Yeah. After she's gone on that amazing journey. So let's, before we wrap up my thoughts on the album, let's take a listen to the final track, The Road That Leads to Heaven.
If you like me, won't you stay a little while? We could count the falling stars above our heads. Will you walk with me another lonesome night?
I guess that kind of plays in with what I mentioned earlier about the zombies of your heart.
Yeah.
Unquiet things that you think you buried. So the song almost ends on a happy note, and then
The album or the song?
the album, and then this song comes on, which isn't the saddest song, but it's definitely melancholy, and I guess that's kind of life too.
Yeah.
There's happy endings are not just you don't just be happy ever after.
A lot of stringed instruments in here too, and I think that kind of provides a pretty interesting like trancey sort of thing. So, and I think when you hear stringed instruments like that, you kind of look inwards. Like, it's weird. I feel like that's a sort of sound where you hear in terms of self-reflection. So I think that this is a interesting way to close it, because you're kind of, you're thinking of it vibe-wise, like you're kind of doing that, like look in the mirror kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's where my thought process was too. Like the last song he's talking, I presume he's talking about a girl that he's falling in love with. And on this song, whether it's the same girl or another girl, there's that sort of self-realization that no matter how happy you may make me, I'm always going down this road.
Right.
And like, I recognize that about myself. Like, I think I'm happy and I'm settled. I'm definitely not in the headspaces I've been in the past, but I am also me and could easily get back in those places again. I don't know if I've stalled them or gone beyond them. That remains to be seen. So that was the mysterious tale of how I shouted wrong-eyed Jesus. And I can see why Jim himself has a strained sort of relationship with the song.
Yeah.
where it came from, what it means to him.
And I think the more you've explained throughout listening to this album, like, and knowing what I know about you as a person, yeah, this makes sense that this is like a peeling back the layers of Chris kind of thing.
And it's funny because, like, I've listened to this album hundreds of times, and there was a period of time when I came out of that marriage. So I remember when I first got this album, I listened to it constantly for a while. I think there was probably a period of a week or two where it was like 24/7. I was listening to this. And then somewhere in that divorce, I lost this album. And I remember stumbling upon it again sometime later when I was with my current wife. We were at like Newbury Comics, and it just popped out, and it was like the universe said, buy this now.
Yeah.
And started listening to it again. And I had a different relationship with it because of where I was at the time. But even now, like today, like I said, I've listened to this album many, many times. These songs speak to me. They're in my head, but I haven't really like sat down, looked at the lyrics, and tried to take a little more critical approach until tonight. And I have I think a deeper appreciation for what I presume was going on in Mr. White's head, and how that relates to what was going on in mine. Jim, you made a great album. If knowing him, he may listen to this review, and I hope it's edifying to know what it means to somebody else, that in your pain and suffering there is great beauty, and that can speak to somebody and help. It helped bring me through a dark period. Yeah. Which
and that's the thing with music. So full disclosure, by the time this episode comes out, I put out an album yesterday. And the whole point of me making the album is not necessarily because I just want to make music and put it out. I want to do those things because it's therapeutic for me. And I hope that by me putting out there what my experiences are and how I feel makes others understand that they're not alone. And that this is a common problem to go through, or common feelings to go through. And, might not make a lot of sense to anybody else or anybody that's not in a certain situation. And that's okay. Yeah. And that's fine. So, and I spent a lot of money to put it together and all this time. And I don't want a single penny of it back. I just want my feelings and thoughts to be out there. And I think I sympathize with a lot of artists who feel the same way, that it's just, they don't care about the profits or the money or anything. They just want to put out what they need to put out, say what they need to say. And maybe in a way, Jim's the same way.
Yeah. And that's art.
That is art. That's the way art should be.
Yeah.
Not this manufactured thing that it's become,
And I think that's a great thing about, especially an album or songs that center around strife of some sort. A breakup, that's a universal thing.
Yeah.
Almost everybody goes through it.
Exactly.
It's a motif. It's almost cliched. However, for each person, that's a unique experience. And yet again, to flip the card once more, you can sing about it, you can express it in some form of art, and that's universal and can connect with people. Like, that's an amazing, amazing thing.
Right.
I'm happy to be the fan who has music speak to them, but I am jealous of those that can create. So kudos to all of you. Oh, yeah. So that was, again, this album. So what do we have coming down for us next week?
So next week, we are going to be listening to a band that came out of our town, little Abington, Massachusetts.
Ooh.
And that is A Loss for Words. We're going to be listening to their album, The Kids Can't Lose. I think that came out in 2009. So it's coming up on, it's 11, almost 12 years now.
Nice.
But one album that in high school I really, really liked a lot. I actually had the pleasure of meeting the bass player and the lead singer, because they live here and they're super townies and they like eat at the ale house on Friday night kind of thing. Go to Sub Galley, get meatballs. If you live around here, you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So maybe, and we're still working on it, we might have some of them joining us. If not, we'll just be chatting about A Loss for Words, which is totally fine too. But The Kids Can't Lose by A Loss for Words. So I think we're mainly having the discussion about them because they're local. You know, they're actually pretty big, I think, in Japan and like in the Asia. But they're pretty big around here too. They played Warped Tour with a lot of the other bands. So again, not necessarily esoteric in the sense of the style, but I think more that how many bands are from your hometown. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that
right.
made it that big. So we had the unique opportunity. We're going to go with it.
Awesome. So that's on tap for next week. And in the meantime, don't forget to check us out at esotericathepodcast.com. Links to all our social media and content, past episodes. Everything's up on YouTube now. Please make sure to check out our channel and subscribe.
Buy a t-shirt while you're at it.
That'd be great. Christmas is coming. Nothing makes a better gift than Esoterica merchandise.
Fun fact, t-shirts fit in stockings.
That they do. And they look killer on you. And they're black, which is slimming. So no reason not to buy them.
Black goes with everything.
Right. So until next week.
Stay esoteric.